I initially just wanted to capture his story. When you meet someone socially, they ask you questions about your life, you ask them questions about their life, and in hearing his answers when talking about his life, the two things that struck me was that I was like, oh, that's an amazing story. But also I loved the way in which he told it. He's a real storyteller and he loves telling stories. So I just thought it'd be great to capture that. And because he's got a recording studio at his house, it was very easy for me to just say, when I'm in LA, he's always at home. So I just said, when I'm in LA, I'll swing past your house and we'll just go into the recording studio and just chat, because you should really capture these stories while you still remember all the details. And at the time, it wasn't for any purpose other than to get a recording of it. I literally said to him, it might be for you to just listen to in a nursing home one day, which I think he enjoyed the idea of himself listening to himself in a nursing home one day, which is probably the reason he agreed to do it. But that is literally the pitch. And then over the course of a year and a half, every time I was in LA, we would just get together and do these recordings. And as the recordings went on, the more that I heard, the more that I got excited that maybe there was a way of structuring this into a narrative film. In putting all those recordings together, it then begged the question, is the best way to portray Rob? And from the recordings, he would often talk about being a performing monkey. And because he was the one telling the story and because we were seeing it through his eyes, I just thought it would be a very unique way of telling the story to portray him as he sees himself, not as we see him. And so that's where the idea of the monkey came from. And I also think that for some strange reason, you feel more for the monkey than you would if it was just someone playing Rob. It allows you, in the same way that a musical allows you a sort of theatrical license. People who walk down the street don't just burst into song, but they do in musicals. So you're already in a realm of heightened reality, which I love. I love heightened reality as a canvas to work on. And so I think that when you have this heightened reality through the genre of a musical, to then on top of it add a monkey, becomes even more heightened, and it does things. It really does. It somehow allows you to see yourself in Rob more than if it was a human playing it. None of this would be possible if it wasn't for Rob being so open and being so raw. And I don't want to make out that it was just for this project. I think if you watch any of Rob's interviews, he will say the things that other people won't. He will be self-deprecating. He will tell a story that is embarrassing or even paints him not in the most favorable light. And yet he will still tell the story. And I think what's exciting about this film is you have this personality who is open to showing himself warts and all. And that's not always the case. Quite often in the musical biopic genre, the most disappointing aspect of those films is how watered down they are. And so you don't really feel like you're getting the truth. Whereas I think the amazing collaboration that we had with Rob was that he allowed us access to his raw and unfiltered life. And I think that's a very rarefied space to be in, or allowed to tell the story in such a honest way. I mean, the musical sequences are a lot of the lessons learned from The Greatest Showman. Obviously, Ashley Wallen and Jenny Griffin, his assistant, who did all the choreography, the work they did on Showman was outstanding. I think the work they did on Better Man is even better. They constantly creatively blow me away. And it isn't just the choreography of what's in front of the camera, but it is the choreography of the camera itself, which is, people like Bob Fosse, there's no one better when it comes to staging musical numbers. And, Ashley actually, in so many of those musical numbers, is the actual camera operator. So he's credited for choreography and camera operating. And that's because we learn on Showman that when you're talking to a camera operator about you have to be here on this beat and you have to be here on that beat, and we have to sweep through this moment as the music swells, unless they're a dancer, giving them counts can be very difficult. And the precision in which we work out these musical numbers, and it's all done through sketching. So we shoot them out on our iPhones, we cut them together, we watch them, we evaluate it, and we do it again. Some musical numbers, something like She's the One, which has got very specific transitional moments that all happen musically. There are so many versions that we shot and edited. Patrick Carell edits all of these musical rehearsals together. He's a producer on the film, but he also sits on set and edits on set as we create these numbers and double checks what we did in rehearsal against what we're doing on set, because the specificity of the moments musically, it just means that things have to lock. And if they don't lock, they'll never work in the edit. And we want to be able to know that before we've moved on. We don't want to get into an edit suite months afterwards and go, oh, didn't work as well as the rehearsal. We want to double check that right there and then. So we don't move on from any shot unless Patrick's given us the all clear. And it's a wonderful way to work because we all get to do this thing away from the lights and the crews and everything, where we're just doing it in a rehearsal space with a laptop, and a phone, and we're just sketching out the idea. And once that idea works and makes you feel something and gives you goosebumps, you go, once all of the costume, production design, cinematography, all these elements get added on top. Once all of those talented people come to bear on the image, it's going to work. And you have a great confidence moving forward that all these people you rally around you to create these spectacles, you feel very clear that it's in service of something that will give you the feeling that you're striving for. Weta set up in Melbourne, Australia to do this production, and they're originally from New Zealand. They've done obviously some of the greatest digital performance characters that have ever happened, from Avatar to Lord of the Rings to Planet of the Apes. It was after the third Planet of the Apes where I was just blown away by the performances of Andy Serkis and Mark Rylance, and these are incredible actors. And so much of that film was so moving based on the unspoken word, just done with looks. And I just thought, wow, if they're at a level now where they're capturing this really subtle performances, but incredibly moving and incredibly powerful, I felt very confident that they would be able to apply all of that knowledge to Robbie's character and then add singing and dancing on top of it. And so that was sort of the evolution of what they'd done in the past and where they took it. And I think what they've done in this film is the greatest work that has ever come out of Weta. I come from a background of visual effects and animation, and it blows my mind. And that is a credit to Luke Miller, the visual effects supervisor, and how bold he was in terms of following us into this narrative. And Andy Taylor, the visual effects producer from Weta. The two of them, they just rallied behind this project in a way. They brought an incredible team of artists who were wildly passionate about this film together. And the work they did not only was a constant source of inspiration for me, and it, you know, in moments of exhaustion, of creative fatigue, we would get these deliveries on a Friday, and I would just smile from ear to ear. Every Friday was like Christmas morning. Like when I got the delivery from Weta, and we would review in sequences, which is really a unique way of working and something I will always do moving forward. You know, quite often in the world of visual effects, you sort of have hero shots and you review shots, but reviewing sequences means that you look at it as it's going to be watched in the film. You look at it as part of an edit. And it was just an amazing way to evaluate performance, but also it means that you don't get sort of myopic and just focusing on one little thing and playing it on loop over and over again, which isn't how people are going to watch it. So it meant the iterations in terms of creating the visual effects were greatly reduced.
That's so cool. And I've asked you this before, but what are you excited for audiences to take away from this film or experience in the theater?
I mean, I just think there's a lot of unique experiences that people can take away from the film. And, you know, the lesson I learned from Showman is that whatever you think people are going to take away from the film, it's so often something else. And I think that's just because everyone comes to it with their own personal experience and they project their own personal experience, particularly onto the monkey. I think it's the way into that narratively, the way in which you watch a monkey and what he's going through in terms of his mental health issues. I think that that's something that people are really going to connect with. And it's not something that's often talked about in cinema. I think the relationships with his grandma and his father, I think all the interpersonal family relationships are something that everyone relates to. And so there's the external and the internal, you know, and those relationships, both with himself and with others. I think there's a lot for people to see themselves in. There's a lot for people to relate to. And there's a lot of, you know, quite dark moments that can be a conversation starter because it gets brought up in the film. It's wonderful that it allows people that avenue.